Steve Adams from Refractiv, and this is the G Suite is Secure AU webinar. This is timed to take about 30 minutes, and then we'll have some questions at the end. We'll see how my timing goes. The first time we've put this one together, so I've done some dummy runs, but it's not the same as doing it live. Okay, so we'll get cracking. So again, to introduce myself, that's me, Steve Adams, and I'm a senior consultant here at Refractiv, and I'm a Google certified deployment specialist. And I work on all things G Suite really here at Refractiv. I should remind you that we're a Google Cloud partner, and obviously we resell Google solutions and we offer services around them. So today's agenda, here we are in the intro welcome, and we're also going to look at these following steps. So some essentials really, adopting some simple best practices. So for some of you, these might be new things or things you know about and feel guilty you haven't done. Or for some of you, if you're Google admins or you're perhaps more advanced users, some of them may be things you already know about. Then we'll move on to talk about email authentication, and hopefully I can explain what it is and why it's important. And we're going to talk a little bit about device management and you know, the sort of approach you can take from a light touch through a more full control. And then look at some of the enterprise options. So we'll show you what's available in the most expensive and best version of the G Suite. So that's what we're going to cover. And I'm going to move on really into the first section now. Oh, and I should say, yes, at the end, quick Q&A, which you should be able to see. You can do a Q&A, you can ask your questions in the YouTube event on the right-hand side. It may ask you to make a channel. Just stay with it, click through, make a channel, and then it takes a couple of clicks, and then you can add questions. And Kate, my colleague who's on the line here, she's going to compile them for me, and then we're going to look at them at the end. So we won't be answering questions as we're going, but we'll come to them at the end. So we've called this G Suite is Secure RU, and one of the things I like to do is to just talk a little bit about how well Google do things. So I'm expecting you're all aware that Google are well known for doing things in a very secure way and keeping things nice and secure for you. So I'm just going to move across to another window that I've got, and I'm going to pop into here. We're at the G Suite product web page here on the security tab, and I'm just mentioning this. I should say we'll put out a follow-up. We'll put some links and things in there for you to find. This one's one you can find by yourself: G Suite product pages and security. And there's some great resources here. I'll just scroll through. I'm not expecting you to be reading all of this, but things like security first mindset. What that means is, you know, security first means security is built in from the beginning. It's not added on at the end and bolted on. Google talk about kind of some of the organizations that rely on them for security. Google's data centers. There's some, if you like that sort of thing, there's some great videos of data centers and the practices and processes that they use within there. Talking about data protection that you can trust and tailor. Okay, and again, you can click on here. You can say learn more and find more about all of these things on here. So again, I'm just scrolling by so you get an idea about it. Things like data loss prevention. We're going to touch on that today, actually. Malware detection, and also device management. We're going to touch on that today as well. We're going to touch on the security center. And there's a bunch of certifications here. I'm not a lawyer, but I believe these are the right things to have if you want to be taken seriously in the security world. Okay, so that's the security section on the G Suite product page. I'm just going to flip back into my slides again. Okay, so the point really of this is Google can help you. Google already are really secure, but unless you adopt good policies and practices, then you may not be secure. You may not be using it optimally or well. Little word on risk. Obviously, there are threats and there are risks. It's a whole job, it's a whole vocation to understand, you know, IT threat and risks. But for depending on the size of organization, you know, you'll be aware of some of the risks that you face. It's not just about protection from the bad guys, bad people trying to do bad things to you or exploit you, although we're going to focus more on that today in a way. But we should also think about the integrity of data. So, you know, security also includes things like backups and recovery. But today we're mostly going to look about, you know, protecting from threats. So when we look at the risks and threats that we might have, typical things we find with our customer base is credentials being compromised. Things like phishing attacks that get people to sign into a bogus website and give away their credentials. Having weak passwords, although it's quite hard to have a weak password in Google, really, because it enforces good ones. Duplicated and shared passwords, people using the same passwords around the internet for different things. So if one account gets compromised and someone can work out, who you are in your work account, maybe they bring that password and there's a different version of it. The bad guys can work out adding ones and twos and threes and dollars to the end of passwords to give different versions. So that's one way that you can be compromised. Obviously, there are lots of scams out there. There are simple ones that should be easy to spot, and there are more elaborate and clever scams. But spoofed emails is a thing we see a lot, where the header of the email is spoofed or faked in order to fool the machines, to make it the machines think that the email services think that stuff came from a legitimate source, or possibly just to fool the humans. So we'll talk a bit about that. Obviously, things like poor policies and practices can make you vulnerable. If someone does get fooled by a spoofed email to perhaps do some kind of financial transaction, you need a policy in place, processes in place that stop an individual doing something without perhaps checks and balances from somebody else in the company. And then there can be bad apps and services. People can install and give access to bad things from the web and bad things on mobile, for example. Someone puts a dodgy app on their phone and somehow it gets into to access the data from your Google account, your G Suite account, and that could be a way that you could be exploited. So this is not intended as a comprehensive list. This is just kind of the typical things that you should be concerned about. So I'm going to move on. So under our essentials, adopting simple and best practices, I'm going to talk a bit about Chrome profiles. So, we recommend that you work in the cloud. We recommend that you use Google's Chrome browser, and we recommend that you create a profile. And by that, I'll show you what I mean by switching to a Chrome window. Here I'm signed in. Okay, I'm signed in. I can see this badge here. I'm signed in this instance as Steve A at demo2refractiv.net, and that's who my account is. And so everything I do in this Chrome environment is synchronized to the cloud. And if I click on settings here, you should be able to see that I'm syncing everything. If I just click through onto that. So all my apps, all my autofills, bookmarks, extensions, passwords, settings, everything that I do is synchronized to the cloud. So, there's no danger of me losing it here. And I can have access to this environment from anywhere, any computer, anytime. I'm actually running on a Chromebook. So you can run Chrome on Windows, on Macs, on Linux, and of course on Chromebooks. So that's just a word on Chrome profiles. Good practices. We recommend you use them. Moving on. Passwords. Passwords are important. I think you're probably aware of that. You can control and enforce them in the panel. We'll dip into that in a second. You can use a thing called Password Alert. I'll demonstrate that. That's a Chrome extension. You can do some password monitoring in the admin panel as an admin. And there's the option to set up password recovery for users so that users can recover their own passwords. I'm just going to flip into a demo window and go into the admin console. I had one prepared earlier. So just to be clear, to get to the Google admin console, you can normally reach that via the admin spanner, but you need a privileged account to do so. And you can have super admin with full powers to do everything, or you can have granular access to these different aspects of the control panel. So for example, you can create an account where someone could maybe access the panel and change somebody's password, but they couldn't delete a user or set a new user up necessarily, and couldn't access all the security settings. But I'm logged in with full permissions, and here I am on the security panel. And I'm just going to give you a demo of all this. All today really, it's not training, it's a demo, and it's a webinar just to kind of pass on some knowledge and let you know where to look at. So here I've got some basic settings. I can set a minimum length and a maximum length for a password. So, I could up that from 8 to 10 or 12 if I wanted to. And you can have a maximum length. So the defaults are pretty good, but you might want to bump up the 8 in your environment. We'll come back to talk about some of these other things here. Let's have a quick look at password monitoring. I should say I'm on the enterprise edition on this demo platform that I'm working on, and there are some extra bells and whistles in here and features and functions, so you may see things in here as we go through that you wouldn't see if you're on basic or business. So password monitoring, it lets us wander through here and we can see the password length that people have chosen to use, and we can see if Google's given it a good green light score, or in this case a bad score. That one must have a bad password or a not very good password. So we could, as an administrator, decide to go and follow that up and have a look at that and talk to the user about it. I'm not going to show you everything here, but you can look through here. I'm just going to open that panel here, login challenges. So there are ways that you can allow users to overcome login challenges. Google will sometimes give you an extra challenge if it feels something suspicious as you're trying to sign in, and there are ways that you can give users ways to show that it's really them if you want to. Let me just flip back to my slides and check what I'm talking about here. Oh yeah, password alert. Let's talk about that. So I've got a Chrome extension here installed called Password Alert. Okay, and you can install that as an individual or as an admin. You can push that out to everyone that's got a signed in Chrome profile. Okay, and then therefore everyone's got this in place. And what this clever little gadget does, it sits there while you're running in a signed in Chrome profile. And if you go to a bad sign-in page, it will probably notice and it will say you don't want to do that. Okay, and jump in. But here's a nice little demo. I'm at Twitter. Okay, and I'll just type in any old account. Okay, but if I type in the password for the account, my G Suite password, I'm not going to say it out loud. So I've just typed it in, and as I hit the last character, Password Alert jumped in and said, you just entered your Google account password on a sign-in page that's not one of Google's, and it's recommending you reset your password immediately. So this is a really easy thing to implement, and it can have a really big impact because it means that in this G Suite environment that I'm running in, I'm not going to be using the same password. Okay, now I can override it and ignore it this time, and I can always ignore it for this site. So it doesn't mean necessarily that you can absolutely enforce that practice, but it does encourage people not to do bad things like use their same password as their G Suite account for, in this example, their Twitter account. But this could be any site at all. Chrome would notice if you used your password. Quick flip back. What am I talking about? Password monitoring. I've done that. Password recovery. Yeah, you can enable users to be allowed to recover their own password by, for example, you can register your mobile phone, okay, through your account settings, and you can say, this is my mobile phone, and then should you need to recover your password, one of the things Google can do is send a PIN via a text message, for example, to your mobile phone, and in that way recover your account. Okay, moving on here. Another quick thing to look at is app permissions on your account. Let me just copy that link address and take it back over here again. This particular place that I'm going to go to is part of my Google account, and so it's on my account, google.com, and you can see which third-party apps have got access to your account, and you could decide that they shouldn't have. So I've got here a signature system and a better cloud system. That's for administration. Here's our Overdrive solution, but I'm not sure what. I'm just getting somebody buzzing me. Oh, they've gone. I'm not sure what this app is. What was it? Text editor for Google Driver. So I might click into here and say, oh, I don't remember adding that. Let's get rid of that and remove access. And of course, if you do that, if you do need to use the if you actually need to use that app later on, then of course you can come back to it and give permissions again. So I'm whipping through this. I'm hoping I'm going at a pace that makes some sense. We're about halfway through our time. We've got lots to do, so I need to crack on. So these are some of the adopting best practices, simple things that you can do. I'm going to move on now. and look at two-step verification. Now, I've taken to saying a certain thing about this now, and boiling it down to this when I talk to my clients. If you don't have two-step verification enforced for your G Suite user accounts, I'm asking, how do you sleep at night? Because that's the biggest thing, simplest thing you can do is turn on two-step, okay, and stop people being able to sign into your account even if they know your password. Makes it much, much harder. And you can get to the two-step landing page. And again, we'll give out all these links out, but if you just remember two-step landing, great resources here for your users and for yourselves, okay, telling you, what you can do and how it works, talking about different methods of creating the second factor, apps on phones, little security keys, okay, and how it protects you. So all these things are really important that people understand this as part of their job, in my opinion. And if you want to go ahead and get started, you can click Get Started, and it'll take you through. And you can walk through there. I'm not going to do a tutorial on that. That would take 5 or 10 minutes. I'm just saying there it is. It's easy to do and easy to understand. And back to my slides. If you ain't got it set up, really, how are you sleeping at night? It just means you don't understand the threat, in my opinion. You should be worried about it. Okay, I'm going to move on. In two-step verification, we can enable it as an admin. We can implement it, which means we say to everyone, you need to go and implement this, and we can review that. We can review it in the admin panel, and then we can enforce it. So when we enforce it, we're saying this must be in place and you can't turn it off again. And there are ways within the admin panel where you can, or an admin can say, on this date it goes live. So, we're counting down the days until we go live. And you can also have a sort of grace period for new users. So a new account gets added, two-steps enforced across the whole domain, but they've got some number of days, 2 days, 7 days, something like that, to make sure that they're up and running, so they're not locked out of their account. Very important that you adopt this, and very important that you help your users use it well. So I'm going to move on. Going to try and go quickly through email authentication. I've looked at lots of different definitions of this. The best way to understand this really well is to watch a good video. But I'm not going to show you a good video. I'm going to give you a quick introduction to this and try and make some sense of quite a complex area, and tell you briefly what it is and why it's important. So I'll let you read that, and I'll talk through it as well. Email authentication, it's a technical solution proving that an email is not forged. Okay, it provides a way to verify the email came from who it said it came from, who it claims to be from. And its typical usage, where it comes in is to block harmful or fraudulent emails, those spoofed ones we were talking about, that are used for phishing and sending spam and scams and things around. So the steps for email authentication, this is techie stuff. We're on a technical webinar here. So SPF is called Sender Policy Framework, and it's an email validation protocol to help block those bad things like email spoofing. Essentially, you create a domain name service, DNS record, to declare which services can legitimately send emails for your domain or on your domain. So we might say we use Google, we use MailChimp, we use a couple of other services, but we declare to the internet which ones. So a receiving service, not a human, but the service can say, I've got an email purports to come from refractiv.co.uk. Let's go look up where that might have come from. And if it didn't come from one of the authenticated sources, then it treats it more suspiciously, maybe trusts it less. I'm going to move on to the next one. Email authentication, DKIM, domain key identified mail. So this is an authentication method, again, to help stop spoofing. And it allows the receiver to check that an email claimed to have come from a specific domain was indeed authorized by the owner of that domain. So SPF is a publication of some records that say these are the places that might send you emails on our domain. These are the legitimate ones. This is actually a slightly different thing. It uses an encryption and a public-private key pair. So you publish your public key, for those that understand this stuff, on the internet, okay, via your DNS settings. And then every email that is sent by the sending service will include some encrypted text. And that encrypted text effectively is a bit like, as I've said here, the King's seal. So if you choose to, you can check that king seal, if you like, from the olden days. If you're with me, you know, the king would put his seal, or the queen would put her seal on the paper, and then send a rider off to your place to deliver it. Now, if you didn't check that the king's seal was authentically there on there, you could be spoofed if you got fooled by one that looked a bit like it but wasn't quite right. Okay, and that's kind of what DKIM is. And I just want to pop back out to here, and I'll jump into Gmail, and I'll just show you here. Here's an email about the webinar. I'm going to read it. So it looks like it came from Lucy Taylor at Refractiv. Okay, all looks good. But what I can do here, I can click on the more buttons, and I can show the original. Okay, and when I do that, I can see that it passed the SPF, it passed the DKIM. Well done, Lucy. And it passed the DMark, which I'm about to come on to. Excuse me. And if I scroll down, this is the actual header of the email. Okay, and in here there's a DKIM signature, and this stuff here, okay, is the encrypted text that I talked about, which is created using the private key, which is not known to anyone apart from, you know, G Suite in this instance. And when you receive it, when your email service receives an email like this, you can use that public key to decrypt that and check that it was created by the authorized sender. Okay. So SPF and DKIM, and I'm going to talk a little bit about DMark by switching back into my slides. DMark is domain-based message authentication, reporting, and conformance. Okay, and this is what I'm going to say about this on this short webinar. SPF and DKIM are configuration settings. You put records on your DNS and you make sure that your services comply and are set up correctly. DMark is more of a project, and to some extent, depending on the size of your operation, it may be a way of life. Okay, so utilizing and doing DMark is a big topic, and it's the kind of thing that you can get a lot of value from. However, it takes effort, and we'd be happy to talk to anyone about that. But just to mention it really on this set of slides, I have got a link here as well. Let's just copy that link. And you know, there's tons of, unsurprisingly, there are tons and tons and tons of resources out there, and you know, they look like this. They're pretty dense and technical, and you can read about DMark to your heart's content. And there are lots of expert service providers out there that can help with it as well, and we can help with a bit with that as well for our clients. So checking the time, I'm about halfway through, and I've used up quite a lot of the time. So, but I'm just going to keep going for now, and we might skip over a little bit of the next sections. So I've talked about email authentication, and we've got SPF records, DKIM records, and then DMark pulls that together. I have some steps to adopt there, but you can basically read that on that website. Yeah, I'll quickly show you the CheckMX tool. I've shown you the show original on the emails. Let's just see. If I go for this one and this one. So this is a tool that Google offer. It says googleapps.com, which is an old Google Apps domain. But we're looking up, in this case, the domain refractiv.co.uk, and then I've also got kind of a made-up one. So Refractiv, on our domain, I'm pleased to say, has got lots of ticks, and we've got SPF records in place, we've got DMark in place, and we've got MX records and SPF records and everything. Everything's got a tick. This one, which is not a real one, I just made it up, although it is a real domain, but it's not a Google domain. You know, is getting messages here about not being set up correctly. This means not set up correctly for Google, which is fine because whoever this is isn't really using Google. But you can use this tool, which is under Google's toolbox. Okay, and then you get links to help desk articles here. So if I click through, talks to me about how to work with my SPF records. So I'm zipping back here again. I'm going to move on. Quick look at device management. Don't bother reading that slide. It's just cut and pasted out of Google's website. lots of clients that we work with, especially in the SME space, don't know quite what you can do with device management just out of the box in the basic and more so in the business version of of G Suite. So I just want to mention a few things. You can do setup, you can do device approval, and you can do things like settings on Android and whitelist apps and things. So I'm going to run you through that really quickly. Let's just close down some of these tabs and have a look what we've got here. So I've got some that I prepared earlier. Let's just open these up. So within the Google G Suite admin panel, as this page loads, okay, there's a device management setting section, okay, and under here you can do a bunch of things, but you can turn on mobile management, okay, and you can create settings for different devices. You can also do this by organization unit, which allows you to have perhaps different policies and rules for different people or different groups of people. So you can see I've turned this on, and I've turned on the advanced version, which allows me to do quite a lot of settings. The basic version is what it says. It sets a lock screen policy and lets you wipe accounts from devices. But the advanced lets me do more. So device activation here, I should, if I can get through to the right place, be able to show you a device that I've just added recently, which I think I've got on here. Yeah, so I've just prepared some tabs, so I haven't got to wait for them to load. So this is devices pending approval, and this is my phone, and this is one of my accounts, and it's pending approval now. So we can click into here, okay, and then if we want to, we can say, yeah, that looks like a good device. I've clicked on the more here, and I can approve that device. Okay, it's just giving me a little bit of information about this is what you're going to allow, okay, and I approve the device. And what happened was, by turning on the management, when I tried to create the account on, in this case, an Android phone, it had to download the Google Device Policy app from the Play Store, and the user, me, had to agree to the terms of that app, okay, and install it, which then gives the administrator, via this sort of method, the ability to do administration on it and control it in certain ways. Okay, always important with these things that your HR policies and comply with whatever regulations and legal stuff they need to. This is about how you implement that stuff, but it's always important to have the policies in place so your staff know what you're doing with their devices. I've skipped to another panel here, Android settings, so we can do all sorts of things here. I'm just going to give you a flavor of it. I am dashing through this. I'm hoping it's going at a pace that makes sense to people. And again, this is really giving you a taste of stuff as opposed to a comprehensive training session or something. So you can set these settings again for the whole domain or for an organization unit, and you can say what's allowed and what's not allowed. So allow lock screen widgets, let the user wipe their own device completely if they wanted to, or you can stop them doing that. Let's have a quick look down here. Apps and data sharing. Let's look at that one. Just takes a while to load sometimes. So you can allow and disallow, enable and disable all sorts of things. You could say, for this group of users, I'm going to say for my G Suite training guys, okay, we're going to say that they can't allow non-Play Store apps to be installed. I could say they also can't allow USB file transfer from their device to another device, okay? And I can pick and choose, and I might have different rules for different groups of people under a org unit. And if I make a change, I can save it. Okay, I'm just going to move on to my next panel and look at application management. So for things that are under management, for devices under management, I can whitelist apps, and I've got actually another one here. If I click this, it opens this panel up. I've just preloaded them just for speed. And so these applications have been approved and are able to be used and installed and used on those phones or devices that we're talking about that are under management. And I can click through here and look at the Play Store. So what I could do is say, my users can install whatever they like. I might have a policy saying you can do what you like, but please be sensible grown-ups. Or I might say I don't trust you to be sensible grown-ups, so I'm going to decide what you can install and what you can't, essentially by whitelisting things. So we might say we like Evernote in our environment, or we might use Asana. Here's Asana, which is a sort of to-do list project management app. Okay, team projects. So I could say, right, we like that one, we use that one. So I'm going to approve that by clicking approve. It tells me a little bit about it. I can say approve. And then that joins the whitelisted apps. So my users could potentially use that and download and install it. There are also ways, I should just mention here, you can say keep it approved when it wants new permissions, or revoke the app when it asks for new permissions, just in case you're worried about an app comes in benignly and then later on demands some big permission change that you didn't want to let people have. So I'm just going to save that setting. Yeah, so you can also, through other settings, places in the settings, you can push these apps out to people, and you can push the apps out to devices. So you can say all my users will have these apps. There's actually an awful lot you can do in device management that I've kind of touched on whizzing through it. In preparing this session, I realized we could have just actually done 45 minutes on mobile devices. But I think the important thing is to give you a flavor of that, and hopefully that was reasonably coherent and not too confusing. And I'm going to switch back to, I'm realizing we're a little bit over time, so I'm hoping you're staying with me, and I'm going to move on to the next bit, which is to talk about Enterprise Edition. So Enterprise Edition, this is just a cut and paste from the website for the pricing for the UK. So you've got the basic edition on a monthly price, £3.30. You've got business at £6.60, and a big jump to enterprise at £20 a month per user. So this really is aimed at, you know, larger, bigger businesses and enterprises. But we do have a couple of clients who are at the smaller end of that who do use this, and there is great benefit in it if you can justify the cost rise. So I've got a few things I can demonstrate for you here. Just quickly, we've got the dashboard, security health, and data loss prevention. So I'm going to whiz through that really quick, hoping you're staying with me. Right. The dashboard. Let me just close down some of these tabs. Come on, mouse. So the dashboard here. Now this domain has some activity on it. I wasn't expecting to see that. Let's just do that again. Dashboard. This domain has some activity on it, but not a huge amount of activity. Although I expect to get more than just that, to be honest. I'm not sure why that's doing that. Let me reload it. Curse of the demo, there should be a big panel here with interesting stuff on it. I'm just going to try going in again through a different method and seeing if I can get the dashboard to display. I was going to say there's not a lot happening on this domain, so it's less interesting than a real live domain with hundreds of users on it. But there should be some content there. No, I don't know why I'm seeing that, and I am cursed by the demo. So I'm going to slickly move on before you notice. No one noticed, right? That the dashboard's not showing. I might try it again at the end and see if I get lucky. What I will show you is the data loss prevention, because I've got a demo set up for that. So let me just find my, here we go. Here's another window, okay? And I'm signed in here as another guy called DLP1 on that same domain. So I'm just going to put that window there. I'm going to get my slides, and I'm going to just minimize them for a moment. And I'm going to come back here to my admin panel, and I'm going to look here at rules. So data loss prevention, as I said earlier, is not really about backups and recovery and that sort of data loss. It's more about not losing information, leaking information from the organization. And you can create rules, okay? And there are some standard sets of rules, and you can highly customize and tailor it. But I've got a couple of sets of rules here saying prevent sharing of personally identifiable information data of the UK, okay? And I've got one here saying prevent sharing of credit card numbers domain wide. I'm going to click into this rule just to give you an example. That might be why my other thing isn't working, because my login's timed out. Do you know what? That would make a lot of sense. That would make a lot of sense, although you'd think it would have asked me to log in, wouldn't you? So we'll go back and look at the dashboard again in a second. In fact, let's keep going with this for now, and we'll go back to that. So this particular rule says this triggers in Google Drive files. Okay, the conditions are if it matches global credit card numbers, and we're on sort of a high alert for this, so you can be more or less sensitive, because obviously there's potential for it to be overly aggressive and match things that aren't really a proper true match, or it could potentially miss things. Okay, and then the actions, if something meets these criteria, the actions are to notify the super admins. Okay, so grass them up. Okay, and block external access in Google Drive. Okay, so very quickly, this is a very quick demo of this. I'm going to go into being this user, okay, and I've got a document here that I prepared earlier. It's interesting to do this in real time, but again, I've just for slickness of this demo, I've done it quickly. So this is offending in a number of ways, this document. It's got a driver's license, it's got national insurance number, it's got a visa number, and a passport number. So any one of those things should trigger either this set of rules or the other one with person identifiable information in it. You can see on this sharing button, it's been noticed, and it says the document contains a driver's license number. So I'm just going to click into here. And if I click on advanced, if I just try to share this with, so I want to leak let's say, for example, I want to leak some information externally. So I'm going to send this to my own personal Gmail account, or try to, and what I should get is a block, okay? And this is saying it's got the driver's license number and therefore cannot be shared outside Refractiv. I think it's hit the first block, and that's the one it's reporting, even though this is actually offending in multiple ways against my rules that I've got here. But I think it's the first one it's found is the one that it's reporting on. And I just simply can't share that now. I can't share that outside. It's just stopping me. If you apply a share initially, okay, and then later the sensitive information gets added to a file, retrospectively the person that it's shared to inappropriately is unshared to, or it has an X next to their name in the sharing settings. So that's very powerful when you think about it, to control data, things like complying with things like GDPR and etc. In there, but again, only available in the Enterprise Edition. Let me, at risk of looking like a real idiot, let me just go back and look at the dashboard and see if I can get it to load now. Because I think because I wasn't signed in. No, I'm still not getting anything. That's really frustrating. Okay, I'm going to ignore that and move on. Apologies for that. So back into my demos. Let's have a quick look at the health check. So under security, we've got a dashboard here, and we've got the security health. Let's have a look at that. And this is looking across the whole domain, and hopefully going to give us a report. We can filter on things if things have got a recommendation, if things are configured securely. So I could say has a recommendation, and then it's got suggestions here for us about what we might want to do. So this little one here, recommendation, and it's suggesting configure the access checker for recipients only for all organizational units. This gives you control over the accessibility of links shared by your users and prevents data leaks, reduces data leaks. Again, this is something that would take a more comprehensive demo to understand, but this is really a level of sophistication beyond what you get in the basic or the business there. And let me just check as well, because I may have been going stupidly the wrong path to the wrong dashboard. So let me just come on. There you are. I went the wrong way. I was bamboozled by the other dashboard that was mentioned here. So apologies. Is this being recorded? And I've got away with that. So the security dashboard I'm actually showing you is under security dashboard. Okay. And the thing I was saying earlier on is this isn't a particularly active domain. Okay. So it's difficult to really draw a lot of conclusions from here, but you've got things like spam filtering being talked about, how peaks and troughs of how many messages have been put into spam folders over time. Users marking their emails as spam or phishing. Okay. And you can see how in an environment where you've got a lot of users, this kind of dashboard could be very useful. Perhaps easier to track this kind of stuff, or if you've got a smaller number of users, perhaps there's less value in this. But for some organizations who are taking security seriously, enterprise, despite the fact that it's aimed at larger companies, could very well be a really good investment for you, depending on how seriously you are taking your security. So I have overrun a bit. I'm hoping there are still people there. Kate, are there still people there? Send me a message. I'm just going to switch back to my slides, and let's just wrap up here. So we talked about assessing and understanding and assessing threats and risks, thinking about the ones that you've got to do. I think there's some basics you can do, just good password protocols, adopting two-step. Did I say that? Adopt two-step. So stay with it and do the basics, and then go further and do better. Things like device management. Devices are really important. They're really important ways that you could be leaking data or getting compromised by someone getting a phone stolen, for example. And then we would recommend, getting help. Get help. This is a job. This is a full-time job, understanding this stuff well. It's an IT professional's job. So on that note, we offer services to consult, to train and support, your people, your business. And it can be pretty light touch, make things a bit better, or it can be a fairly, longer term project to really help you take this seriously. But what you don't want to be is that company that wait till something happens and then suddenly take security really, really seriously. There are some really simple things you can do, to help. Okay. I'm just going to check now. Thanks for staying with me till the end if you did. It went a bit longer than I was expecting. I've only got one question at the moment, which is, will there be a recording of the webinar? Yes, there should be. There will be a recording of the webinar made available, I think, to people that attended, maybe wider to share on as well. So it doesn't look like we've got any other questions at the moment. Let me just check my chat messages to see. And there's a message there. Okay, but I think that's it. So I think I am going to wrap up. And I would just say thanks again for attending this. Do get in touch if you want to. If you're a client already, you can get in touch with the help desk, or through your account manager, either probably Sean or Dawn. You can obviously follow up with Lucy and Kate, who have been putting out the messages about this. And if you're not already a client of ours, do get in touch. We'd love to talk to you. We'd love to have the opportunity to work with you. And so on that note, I'm going to say thanks again for being with us, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks a lot. This is Steve Adams signing off.